Hey, good morning again, and thank you all for letting me know. Thank goodness I checked about the sound. It was being weird, and I thought, anyway, I didn't double check. So I'll start again. This is talking about your fees, setting your fees for your practice. And for I'll just tell you what my experience is being in a high income area in Northern California. And you have to kind of take it from there because the thing about nurses having their own business, I have found, is, they don't know much about business. So they really, and I know for myself, I had no idea how to set my fees. I just came up with a fee. This was 1996. And I did $20 a visit because I thought, well, $20 an hour, maybe it'll take me an hour. But it was a really silly thing to do because I started off way too low. I should have, for this area around then, been about $50 for a home visit. But it took me a couple of years to get there, live and learn. And what happened was I had a very wealthy client at the beginning. He leased Learjets for a living. And he was super nice. And the first thing he said to me is, he said, Laura, your fees are much too low. People perceive that they are getting higher quality if they are paying more. And I know that that's true, as stupid as it sounds. So I started gradually going up from there. But just know that. And if you're having your own business, you have to factor in, driving, car, office rent, supplies, all these things into some sort of a number that makes it worthwhile for you to be doing this. So why get into a business where you're going to end up not being profitable or making a good living, etc.? So learn from my mistakes. Don't charge too little. See what people are charging in your area. And if you're really good, charge more. Just tell them that that's not always the best approach. You're going to have to, kind of feel your way. But what I do in my area is I have one contract with an agency, and the copy of the contract is on the Facebook page, Laura Roehrick Street Feet. If you go in there and hit files, there's a copy of the contract. So you could actually look at that or take it to an agency in your area and say, look, there's this other nurse in California. She's doing this, blah, blah, blah. So in that contract, I get $150 for the first visit and $100 for follow-up visits. And what they told me was, or what I based it on, is what would I realistically, in a perfect world, charge if I was driving a long distance in my county, say a half hour, 45 minutes away somewhere, and doing really horrible feet. Well, $150. I'm sorry. Back and forth, that's taking up a lot of my time. Plus, what I'm doing for people and the kind of feet that I'm seeing, it's well worth it. People have just told me that, and I know that. So, in fact, the woman who was in charge of this program, of this contract that I have, I met her because I ended up doing her mother-in-law and father-in-law's feet. They were part of this program. And she told me, she was watching me, and she goes, Laura, I have to tell you something. When I first saw your contract and saw what your prices were, I actually thought they were a little high. But now I think that you are a bargain. So, and then another instance, I went out maybe a half hour, 40-minute drive to do this man's calluses last year. At the end, I hadn't really talked to him. I usually like to tell people ahead of time so they're not surprised, and the majority of the time I do. Anyway, I saw this one gentleman, and I know he had paid me like $100 the last time. So this time I said, well, it's $125. And he wrote me a check for $200. He said, you have no idea what you have done for me. He had a huge callus, bottom of his foot. I changed his life, and he could afford it, and and that was it. And I usually don't take tips. That's, you just don't do that. He had already written the check, and I went, okay, I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. But this just goes to show that this kind of thing is happening. I'm getting this kind of money. If you live in an affluent area in the U.S., you could be too. It's harder for the nurses in Canada. And my suggestion for you up there, in order to really, make a good hourly wage, is to consolidate. Get one or two really good high-end residential care homes where people, and even if you're getting $40, what I meant, I never finished my sentences, where people can afford to pay. Actually, I don't know what sentence I was trying to finish, but I tend to leave things halfway through. So if you get a residential care home that's pretty high end, I know people who are getting around 40, and that can be good if you're doing many of them if you're efficient with your time. And that's another thing. It's really up to you. This is your business. If you want to dawdle and twiddle your thumbs and, charge $30 and be in somebody's house for an hour, go to it. But I am in there to go, do what I do best, and leave as fast as I can. I mean, I'm not rushed, I'm not hurrying, but I'm efficient. That way I get to see more people in an hour. I consolidate, I'm making better money, and I am happier. But if you want to fiddle around and go slow, you can do whatever you want. So back to my group home visits. At the large residential care home that I have, my bottom line is $65. That's just kind of for people whose nails aren't too terrible, but they're, they need me, and I do them about every 2 months. I'm averaging probably more in the $85 a visit, even in the group homes. And I work it where I get an assistant when I can, when I'm doing a lot of people, and I pay her $20 an hour to gather the people for me, to kind of clean up so I can just sit there and do them. Kind of like the orthodontists do. They, travel around on their little chair doing the braces. And so you think about what you're doing. Look at your time. Look at what you're charging. And really put some thought into it, because if you develop this whole thing of like charging $30 for a home visit and you have them scattered all over the place, it's not going to be as efficient. But you're welcome to do whatever you want. Just heed my warnings. So I think that's it. We'll post this one again. Sorry, guys, for that dress rehearsal.